Good morning and welcome to the channel. So I was out bright and early yesterday morning and made a very small number of images that I really quite like actually, so I thought it'd be good to revisit those today and also take a little bit of time out to talk about chaos in woodland photography, or lack thereof. So we're in midsummer right now, and it's that time of year when a lot of photographers shy away from the woods, and I can kind of understand why. But personally, I still absolutely love it. So we're going to go for a bit of a wander, have a look at some compositions which hopefully show that the green gown of summer still provides lots of opportunity. I wouldn't believe the route that I took yesterday to get to this spot. Thankfully a lot easier today and certainly a hell of a lot safer. But anyway, that's another story. But it was worth the effort yesterday to find this scene. So behind me here is the scene that I made a composition out of, which we'll take a closer look at shortly. But it's looking very, very different today because yesterday everything was soaking wet. There was this lovely shine to the understory. The bark and algae on the ash trees was just rich in saturation of lovely rich yellows and oranges, which were contrasting with these cool greens. So I am very, very happy with the composition, but I think I was also excited because I've been looking for this type of image for quite a while now. I've wanted a scene where I could bring in lots of ash trees, get something with depth, and actually, yes, document what's happened as a result of ash dieback, but at the same time show that there's a beauty element to what we can do with a photograph as well. Even though what's happened here is, devastating consequences of the disease, the effect that it's had on the canopy does provide some photographic opportunities as well. So let's take a closer look. I always feel a bit nervous around ash trees, to be honest, because they're in such a sorry state that there's things always falling down. There's a big old ash tree down there with a huge trunk and it's literally just snapped off in the trunk. So you don't want to be around when things like that are happening. I'm sure we'll be fine today, but it's just something to be aware of. So with ash dieback, it's losing the canopy, it's losing its branches, and the consequence of that from viewing it as a photographer is that all the light then comes through. So light which would have previously been quite dappled is now just illuminating all this wonderful bark. And that's one of the features that I do like about ash trees. They have this incredibly clean looking bark, a lovely warmth to it, and often covered in the orange algae, which, as I said before, is a fantastic contrast to the coolness of the green. And these are the things to look out for in summer, because yes, it is a wash of green, but you can find that contrast in warmth. So in terms of how we've composed it, we actually have a hawthorn tree coming up here in the foreground, so that's my anchor point. And then the crown of that just gently arches over, and that provides a nice framing element to the top right hand corner. So I now have my starting point, including a few ash trees to the right hand side of that, just to kind of balance things out with the left. And as we move across from the right to the left, there's this recession, this procession of ash trees which then just disappear up the hillside. And this is a very steep hillside, so it's bringing lots of opportunities to bring in all these tree trunks moving up that steep slope. There is that a hazel back there, kind of creeping in from the left? Absolutely fine. That kind of gesture of the branch just coming into the scene gives another opportunity to give some framing elements with the green leaves. Using the leaves of that to frame the top left hand corner, and as for filling up the space in the bottom left, well, we've got all this dog's mercury, good indicator species of what is an ancient woodland, or at least an ancient woodland floor. and then this fantastic architecture from the ferns, and they're just filling up that green space beautifully. And then having that kind of comparably more empty space gives a really nice element of balance to the crown of the hawthorn and bringing in some of the foliage higher up. 4x3 is what I made yesterday. Looking at it now, I think a 4x5 would be quite good, just to bring in the same amount left to right, but a little bit more height. So this is definitely a scene I'll come back to. I'll come back in the spring, see what it looks like with the hawthorn blossom. Yeah, I just love those repeat visits. Yeah, see what you make of that. I've no doubt that in the early days of this YouTube channel you would have heard me use the word chaos. It's a word that you often hear people use when they're talking about woodland photography. You know, they struggle with the chaos. They're trying to tame the chaos. Woodland is just too chaotic. Well, as I've become a creator and a teacher, I've become more aware of how important language is, and that a single word has the power to change how you think about the things you love to photograph. A word can challenge you, inspire you, or open your eyes to a new way of interpretation. And I think the word chaos had the potential to put me in the wrong frame of mind, because it challenges what nature is rather than embraces it. So what does chaotic actually mean? Well, it's disorder, unpredictability, lack of control. Do you see any of that in nature? Because I certainly don't. I see trees with purpose. I see relationships, life cycles, living organisms, harmony and interconnections. Complex? Yeah, absolutely, but not chaotic. In chaos theory, a small change in initial conditions can result in a very different outcome that's difficult to predict. Whereas in nature, what might appear as being chaotic will have an underlying order, pattern and cycle that dictates its behaviour. These complex patterns can be observed and studied, and that's how I think it should be viewed in photography. Just nature doing its thing in all its beautiful, crazy and curious wonder. I can't in one breath use words such as connection and empathy, but then fight against everything that woodland fundamentally is in an effort to sanitize and minimalize. I dread to think how many images I would have missed if I just dismissed a scene as being too chaotic, too messy, or too out of control. And that's perhaps the problem with the word chaos. It just sounds negative and promotes this mindset of avoidance rather than embracing, or at least being receptive to the very thing that makes nature so incredibly diverse and beautiful. It all very much depends upon your own creative style and intent, of course. I can only speak for myself and my experiences and observations over the years. And as I've said before, I want to speak for the trees. And I feel as if that translation should try and do justice to the woodland's complex patterns of life, not just the conventionally pretty. When looking at the woods and when making photographs, look for the balance and harmony within complexity. This is a self-regulating ecosystem which adapts and finds its own way through complex patterns to maintain balance. It's not to be shied away from, but celebrated. What's complex at a glance can contain truly fascinating patterns and rhythms that only nature is clever enough to create. You just have to look a little deeper to see them. From a scientific point of view, perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe there's been studies which show that sometimes chaos does exist in nature. But whatever the truth is, I think these positive shifts in language and mindset can open up new creative opportunities, and it never fails to ignite the fire in my belly. Now, back in January last year, a client called Nick came on a one-to-one workshop. And just days before the workshop, he received the devastating news that he had a brain tumour. Tragically, Nick lost his battle with his illness and he passed away earlier this year. So I'd like to dedicate this video to Nick because he loved the woods, he loved complexity, and he didn't like the word chaos. So rest in peace, Nick, and I'd like to give my best wishes to his wife, Shirley, and I thank you both very much for my time with you. Now, when it comes to complexity, this private woodland is very complex, and that's not to say that you can't find more simplistic images, you just have to look a lot harder to find them. So in this woodland's terms, the scene that I have here is really quite simple, but I'm in a very awkward position. I had to kind of battle through nettles and things to try and to get to this point, but it is a scene that I made an image of yesterday, and I think it works quite well. But when it comes to those images that are comparably more simple, it still requires a lot of attention to detail because it's those nuances that really make the difference in terms of the refinement of the image. So, dominant species that I mentioned before, yes, I've just photographed some ash trees, but they're not the dominant species. I would say this is mainly made up of hazel and hawthorn, both of which we have here. So we've got this multi-stemmed hazel over on the right hand side, looking rather lovely, and then less congested is the hawthorn. So I wanted to put the hawthorn centre stage, but then I really like everything that's going along around the base because it's got this wonderful texture and structure to it. So we've got these huge ferns that come up. But the ferns, because they're, you've got lots of fronds coming up and arching over, they create a really nice visual relationship with the hazel. I think the two have a lot of similarities. So that's really nice, getting those two working together. And then because we're putting the hawthorn centre stage, it needs a bit of room to breathe as well. So everything's much heavier weighted on the right hand side, and then we're giving everything a little bit of breathing space over on the left, and I think that just helps to kind of settle an image. Just having that, it's another reason why summer's good. Just having that green space helps to kind of calm the scene. And we're balancing things over on the left hand side with more beautiful ferns coming up. And then there's lovely grasses, bits of woundwort as well, just different things going on, more ferns further back, again just adding that touch of depth. So 4x3 scene, nice and simple. So yesterday there was very, very, very thin mist, which wasn't in the trees, it was just kind of, not really, it was kind of drifting over the tree tops and just blowing in every now and then, very transient. But I did get one which just made the image look a bit softer yesterday, which I really liked, so I'll show you that. So yeah, nice scene, nice trees, nice species, like it. A nice short walk to this final image, which is a bit different to the other two. You know, we started off with lots of ash trees through the scene, then we went a little bit more simplistic, concentrated on just the hawthorn and the hazel tree. And this one isn't really about, you know, any particular feature tree, I wouldn't say. Yes, it's predominantly hawthorn, but I'm kind of not looking at it as photographing trees, I'm looking at it as photographing shapes. And the interesting thing with hawthorn is that yes, they can be very dense and congested, but they can also be really quite slender and lovely. And these ones here are just kind of reaching up for the sky, and I just like the way they kind of flow together. So yes, looking at the shapes, looking at lines, both well, there's a few here, but there's a sense of hawthorn trees coming up from both bottom left and bottom right hand corner. They then kind of lean in towards the top. Lovely framing from the hawthorn foliage, and then we just have a bit of a gateway going through. Not to anything in particular. We've got the trunk of a hazel back there, sure, and there's a hint of a birch tree as well. This is just really about feeling. You know, it's just about a very gentle, kind of peaceful mood to the image. And there's various greens going through there as well, because the thing with the Dog's Mercury is that it's a very cool green. If there's any hint of blue in the sky, it's going to soak that up. And that contrasts well with the ferns, but also the moss on the hawthorn trees is more yellow. So we've got that another contrasting element too. Kind of delicate, it's a little bit shimmery because all the foliage and things was wet. And let's say the shape of things, you know, it's just sort of framed and flows and comes together quite nicely. And a nice peaceful image to finish on, I think. See what you think. That's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, but before I go, two very important things that I need to mention. Firstly, my zine, Oak. By the time you watch this, I don't know whether it will still be on pre-order or whether it's ready to ship, but either way, please check it out. I mean, I say zine, it is essentially a book, to be honest, so I think you'll very much enjoy it, so please check it out because it's a great way to support this channel. Secondly, have you heard about the new exhibition? So 3 years ago, Joe Cornish and I had the Woodland Sanctuary exhibition in Danby, which was really fantastic, an absolute career highlight. I loved every minute of it. So we were super excited when National Trust Nunnington Hall got in touch and asked us if we would exhibit there, with the original idea being we can put Woodland Sanctuary there. But then when we thought about it, I thought, well, this is an opportunity to do an entirely new curation, which is very exciting. So we've already chosen the images, we've sized them, we know where they're going to go, and there's 66 prints to make. So it's going to be a fantastic exhibition. I'm really excited about some of the images that are going to be on show. That launches on the 20th of September at Nunnington Hall, so we hope to see some of you there. We don't actually know when it's going to finish yet, but there's going to be a good duration, so there's plenty of time to see it. So yes, very exciting times. Right, it's time for me to head home and get some lunch, but thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon.